The muscles of the neck that can we see in this model, this is the trapezius muscle, and here is semispinalis muscle. This is the splenius capitis. This one is sternocleidomastoid, and between these two muscles we have this one is the levator scapulae muscle. Here we have the posterior division of retromandibular vein that unites with the posterior auricular vein, which is the same for this one, and form the external jugular vein that descends down on the surface of the sternocleidomastoid. Here we have the anterior division of the retromandibular vein along with this facial vein, forming this common facial vein that drains into the internal jugular vein. Here we have the external carotid artery with its three anterior branches starting from inferior to superior. This is the superior thyroid artery. This one is the superior thyroid artery, giving off this branch, which is the superior laryngeal artery, that is going to divide these pharyngeal constrictors into middle and inferior constrictors. This one, these muscles, these three muscles are, this is the sternohyoid, this one is the superior belly of omohyoid, while this one is the thyroglossus muscle. This is the thyroglossus muscle. This one is the hyoglossus muscle. And this is the mylohyoid muscle. This is the anterior belly of digastric muscle. And here we have the common insertion, which is the median raphe. And this is the body of the hyoid bone. Here we have the thyrohyoid membrane, but in the median plane, this membrane thickens, forming the thyrohyoid ligament. So this is the thyrohyoid ligament. Here is the superior thyroid notch or suprathyroid notch, and this is the laryngeal prominence formed by the two laminae of the thyroid cartilage, and it is prominent in males. That's why it is called Adam's apple. Now returning here to these arteries, this one is the facial artery, and this is the lingual, and this is the facial artery. So we have superior thyroid, lingual, and then the facial artery. The facial artery is obvious here as it ascends in the face, giving off these branches: superior labial, inferior labial, and ending as the angular artery, which is not clear in this specimen. This is the submandibular gland here, deep to the mandible. And this muscle is the masseteric muscle or masseter. Now to this side, here is the semispinalis, and this is the splenius capitis, and this one is the sternocleidomastoid. Here we have a posterior division from the external carotid artery. This is the occipital artery. This is the occipital artery. Here we don't have greater, lesser, and least occipital arteries. We only have one occipital artery and one occipital vein. Now this is the levator scapulae muscle, and here we have the scalenes, posterior, middle, and anterior, and between them is the neurovascular bundle, which is not clear here. This one is the internal jugular vein, and this is the internal carotid artery, and this is the external carotid artery, and as they are the terminal branches of the common carotid artery here. The external carotid artery gives off these three branches. This is the superior thyroid, giving off this superior laryngeal, dividing the constrictors of the pharynx into middle and inferior constrictors. Here we have the lingual and also the facial. This one is the facial artery. This one is the facial artery, since the lingual artery is not obvious in this section. It is more deep. Now here we have these muscles. This is the posterior belly of digastric muscle, and this is the stylohyoid. Here we have the superficial temporal artery, and this muscle from the styloid process toward the tongue, this is called the styloglossus muscle. It is anterior to the stylohyoid muscle. So this is posterior belly of digastric, stylohyoid, and the styloglossus muscle. Now we have the parotid gland. Parotid gland has a superficial part, which is this part, and a deep part that is deep to the mandible. This is this one, and also has two processes. This one is the accessory process, and behind the ear here is the glenoid process. From the anterior border of the parotid gland, this duct emerges. This is called the Stenson's duct, that traverses the face, superficial to the masseter muscle, and going anteriorly and then medially to pierce the buccinator muscle opposite to the third upper molar. Here we have the buccal fat pad. Now, here we have this superficial temporal artery that goes over this muscle, which is the temporoparietalis muscle. So this is the anterior branch of the superficial temporal, and this is the posterior branch of the superficial temporal artery. Now this branch of the superficial temporal artery is the zygomatico-orbital artery that participates in the formation of these two arterial arches, the superior palpebral arterial arch and the inferior palpebral arterial arch. These arches are on the superior tarsal plates and inferior tarsal plates respectively, and these tarsal plates are connected to these palpebral ligaments, lateral and medial palpebral ligaments. Here we have this is the supratrochlear artery, and this is the supraorbital artery, and this one is the infraorbital artery. This is the infraorbital artery. This is the infratrochlear. This is the infratrochlear, and this is the infraorbital. This is the infraorbital, and this is the infratrochlear. Since the trochlea lies here, on this side, so this is the supratrochlear, and this is the infratrochlear, and this is the infratrochlear, and this is the infraorbital beneath the orbit. Here we have these diploic veins, and the two terminal divisions of the external carotid artery are the superficial temporal artery, and behind the neck of the mandible is the maxillary artery, and this maxillary artery traverses like this and entering this fossa here, giving these branches. This is the greater palatine artery, and this is the superior alveolar artery, and these are not very important branches to be remembered, only branches of the maxillary artery. Here is the conjunctiva. Since part is reflected, part of the tarsal plate is reflected, so we can see part of the conjunctiva. This is the mental artery here. This is the mental artery exiting from the mental foramen. Any neurovascular structure here is called mental, so you can see a mental artery, and in any specimen, if you see a vein, it is a mental vein, and if you see a nerve, it is a mental nerve. And that's it.